Welcome to My on Mondays, an explorative approach to the possessive My through narratives, art, and sound. I'm Matt Bunk. This week, we have a series of tooth stories I collected at a tooth-themed event hosted by Addressbook, an artist collective in Boise, Idaho. I've said for years that everyone has a tooth story, so this project was kind of about testing that premise. Your tooth story is the story you tell when teeth come up at a party. Most people have a go-to, and some have a few. It could be about losing baby teeth, having braces or retainers, getting teeth extracted, or maybe your current, slightly creepy dentist. For instance, my tooth story is that when I had braces in middle school, I once went for a cleaning and my orthodontist accidentally spat in my mouth. He was chatting to the hygienists while he leaned over me in the chair. I don't think he noticed at all. This classic kind of tooth story comes from Rachel Welker. As a kid, I was the tooth fairy for my 3 older and 1 younger siblings. Around age 5, I lost a tooth, and since I couldn't put money under my own pillow, it takes the magic out of it, my 2 older brothers played the role for me. One wore my dress-up tutus and a magic bedazzled wand, the other wore a plastic tiara and my fairy wings. As boys aged 12 and 9, these dress-up clothes weren't the right size, but that didn't matter to them. To make their baby sister feel special and share the gift of tooth fairy magic, my brothers spared their dislike of dress-up clothes and made a core memory for me. I don't remember how much money I got under my pillow, or if it was the first tooth I lost, but 2 decades later, I remember giggling and joy and the magic of the tooth fairy. Megan has another tooth fairy story. I once lost a tooth while playing in the ocean. I distinctly remember beginning to sob and becoming inconsolable because I thought the tooth fairy would not visit me. On the other hand, Claire didn't give the tooth fairy the time of day. I was on a road trip with my grandparents, and while eating some popcorn, one of my baby teeth popped out. This was on the lone highway in the middle of the Rocky Mountains, and instead of holding on to it for the tooth fairy, I wanted to throw it in the Colorado River. So they parked the minivan and walked me down to the riverbank, where I threw my baby tooth and imagined it floating to the bottom of the silty river. We stood there for a few minutes while I chatted to the river, and then said goodbye and got back to my popcorn. Another crunchy food story was submitted anonymously. I was eating a Taco Bell crunchy burrito thinking it was normal and crunchy until I realized one of the bits was too crunchy. It was my first tooth. Here's a dental story from Mickey. One time in 3rd grade, I had a wiggly tooth. Pretty normal for a kid that age, but I hated it so much. It got looser and looser, but I was too afraid to pull it out. Soon enough, it dangled from my mouth and I could only eat soft foods. Holding on by a thread of bloody skin, my mom eventually had to take me to the dentist to get it pulled. Here's another submitted anonymously. I was an avid thumbsucker as a baby, and it pushed my 2 front teeth so far forward they were horizontal. I had braces twice. This one comes from Katie. I had 8 adult teeth removed because my mouth is too small to store all the adult teeth, not including wisdom teeth, but I had those removed too. Speaking of wisdom teeth, here's a story from Tomas Paisa. I only had 3 wisdom teeth removed because my 4th wasn't a 4th. It's like a dozen little teeth. The node that was supposed to become a single tooth formed into more than a dozen miniature teeth embedded in my jaw like some alien structure. They can't remove it because it would expose my nasal cavity and shit would get real. Here's an interesting note from Anonymous. I love women with tic-tac teeth. Teeny tiny little white candy teeth spaced evenly apart, like Kirsten Dunst and the lady who plays Eowyn in Lord of the Rings. Tiny pebbled stones. One more tooth story from Daisy. I had an insane fear of pulling my teeth as a kid. I would scream like I was about to be murdered every time my mom had to pull one. It was a true battle. However, the little gifts the Tooth Fairy would leave for me were beyond magical. When I was in second grade, I awoke one morning after a night of terror from pulling a tooth to find that the Tooth Fairy had left me something very special. There was a super small envelope, tinier than the center of my little baby hand, and embellished with glitter and petals and lace. Inside was a small letter written in glittery green ink. The Tooth Fairy had written how proud she was of me. She said I was so brave and wonderful, and as a reward for making it over my fear, she'd left me a very special gift. Inside the envelope, she'd left her magic wand. It was no bigger than my pinky, with a small shiny stone on top, itty-bitty flowers along the sides, and little bits of ribbon trailing off the bottom. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I took my prizes to school that day. I showed everyone. I felt the Tooth Fairy's magic so strongly. To me, I had indisputable proof that she was real. I read the letter out loud to my class in our morning circle, and at the end of the day, as I was walking to my family's car, some kid pushed past me and told me his dad told him the Tooth Fairy wasn't real and I was stupid. Then he ran away. Lauren Lemons was kind enough to submit a tooth poem. Baby teeth. Each morning, I lift my son's cracked molar from my jewelry tray. Rub my fingers against the pearled enamel, thumb catching over the ridges. I find teeth everywhere these days. Cast off shells as he ebbs and flows through the house like a tide. One on his desk, another in a plastic bag on the kitchen counter. You've heard of mothers-in-law gifting their sons' brides with boxes or baggies or necklaces of teeth, passing the torch of loving his body, shaped so carefully in the womb's oyster shell, the grit of morning sickness and sciatica rolled into a priceless pearl fashioned cell by cell. My mother kept my umbilical stump in a plastic case on her vanity, a wizened raisin leathery with old blood. I tell the story to laugh at the absurdity of mothers, our stubborn clinging to the driftwood of the past. But here I stand, unable to cast off his relics, watching him grow tall and untethered. Thanks to Noelle Nelson and Open Letter Collective for their help collecting these stories. And of course, many thanks to everyone who volunteered their tooth story. Maya on Mondays is brought to you by Ming Studios, a contemporary art space and international artist residency program in Boise, Idaho. For more information about Ming's programming, or if you'd like to participate in Maya on Mondays, you can visit our website at mingstudios.org. We'll be back next Monday.